Hello and welcome to SouthTech tutorials. Today's video is all about CSS. I'll be taking you guys through CSS, and we really need to first understand what it means. CSS is a cascading style sheet, and it's the one that is used for better representation of HTML when viewed on a web page. Let me give you an example of HTML as a skeleton, then CSS makes the rest of the body parts of a human being. It really gives some people a hard time to understand what CSS means for some beginners, so that I'm giving that kind of an example for a human being. So let me just give you a brief description that I organized in this presentation. You can first have a look. I have defined it as the style sheet language for describing the presentation of HTML. When you view your website on a browser, you see it having some background colors, images, some big font style for when it comes to the wording, all that, the CSS that is used for doing all that job. CSS is the style sheet responsible for how elements can be displayed on a web browser. This is exactly what I have just said. When you see those colors which are used on a website or a web page, it is HTML that is used for doing all that. By the way, to cascade, the meaning of cascading here, to cascade means to give an effort for the benefit of the other. So what CS does, it is normally giving better benefits for HTML to succeed more. That's why they always go hand in hand. When there is HTML, then there is CSS, then there is also JavaScript. So this is a simple description, and then we shall also have to look at the types. There are mainly 3 types of CSS, which we are now going to see in our example when we create our HTML file. So the inline is the CSS that is used inside the body of HTML. Then the internal is the one that is used in the head section. The external is the CSS that is outside HTML but used in HTML through linking. So this one, in order for you to understand them better, at least now you have seen the definition, we are going to open our text editor, and then we shall, by the time we apply this and then I bring you back here, you really know where is the body part of HTML, and then where is that section, the outside of HTML, where all this is located in HTML file. So just have a look, and actually they are really self-explanatory. The one that is used inside the body, because we have already looked at how to create HTML file, we have looked at the body element. So that CSS that you are going to be using inside the body element is one that is referred to as the inline CSS. And the internal is the one that is used in the head section. We have also looked at the head section when we are creating our web page. So the one that is used outside, this one is just linked. That's why I had to use some linking, and we are going to see how to do that. So let's create a folder on our desktop, and then we start. Let me just name it as HTML and CSS. That is our folder for today. Now let's open our text editor, Sublime Text. For those ones who are using VS Code, the procedure is the same. These are just text editors. You can even decide to use text editor of your choice. So now let's open our folder that we created on the desktop. Just open folder, look for where your desktop is, click on HTML and CSS, open it. So this is the text that we are using for today, Sublime Text. So we create new file. let's save it as index. Should be in small letters, index.html. So let's put some HTML code inside it, and we name it HTML CSS. That is the title. Then let's give it a heading. Let's give it a heading 1. HTML and CSS. So let's view it in the browser by copying the file path. Let's look. Heading pages, and let me just reduce them and start something new. It's a very simple run HTML page. So this is our heading, HTML and CSS. Now let's look at the first type of HTML, which was called inline. We are now going to put inline CSS into application here. So let's that heading. Let me change the color of that heading from black, maybe red. So I have to say heading style should be in small letters. Then I say background. Let me just put color. Shouldn't be background color. Red. Save that and then you review. You can now see our title has changed. So guys, you can see now we have changed our title, which was black in color, now it is red in color. So that is now the application of inline CSS, because we say it is the CSS that is used inside the body section. We can have a look. You can see it is used inside the body of HTML. You can now see that inside our body we have heading 1, and then the heading 1 is where we have put that. So let's create a div. Create a div. Then let's give this div a style. Let's give it background color. Let me put blue. And then let us put something inside this div. So let's identify it. Let me just put a paragraph. Just put a paragraph of inline CSS. Used inside the body of HTML element. Now I review that. Just click on F5. You can see now this is our division, and then this div we have given it a background color of blue. We are still using inline CSS, so you can now see we have created heading 1, then we gave it a color of red, and then it has shown. Then this one we have created a div, and then we gave it a background color of blue. So I hope you are now understanding inline CSS in a better way, because we are now putting it into practice. So this is all about the inline CSS. Now let me take you through the other type of CSS, which is the internal CSS. We said that one is used under the head section. This is the head section. You see title, the whole title is inside the head section. That means we have to use our internal CSS inside the head section. You can decide to put it below the title or above the title. It is still giving you the same meaning because we are still inside the head section. So in order for you to deal with the internal CSS, you have to know that we are going to open what we call a style, just like we use the style here. This one, you use it to determine the values that we are going to give to this. So inside the head section, we are going to open what we call style. Don't need this inside at the moment. You open your style and then you close it. You still remember how we were doing in HTML. So when you open your style, then you have to close your style. So let's create another div that is going to take the effect of internal CSS. Let me create it down here. So we are now looking at style. Let's give a brief description here, and then we use the style method of CSS to show the effects. Let me put heading 4. Heading 4. This is all about internal CSS. Save that. So we need to apply the effects of internal CSS on heading 4. So let's type here our heading 4, h4. Then in order for the effects to work, you have to put them in the braces. That means whatever we are going to put inside here will only apply on heading 4, because it is the only thing that we have mentioned here up. So inside here, let's give our heading 4 a background color. A background color of green. Save that. Preview. So you can see it has taken the effects of the internal CSS, and we have used that internal CSS inside the head section, and that was exactly the definition of internal CSS that I gave you here. So you can see it's the CSS that is used in the head section of HTML. Internal CSS only works in the head section. So that is the main area actually where it works. Other sides where it works, I will demonstrate in the next videos, but I wanted to first give you a brief overview, because we are really going to be using CSS as we go on. At least now we have gotten some concept of inline. Inline is the one we just use inside the body. We can even be able to use inline in this heading 4, as long as we don't come in the head section, and we can just use somewhere here by using, if you're using inline, you have to use some terms like style, because this is like the mother of these elements we are inside, because this is an element with its value. So I hope you have gotten something about these two types of CSS, which is the inline CSS and internal CSS. So maybe to close the 3 chapters of CSS, let me just introduce for you the external, and that is what we shall be using a lot in these 3 types of CSS. The reason is simple. When you have a lot of code in your HTML and then you try to use internal CSS, because this one is just an example, but if you are really working on these serious projects like creating your website from scratch to the end, that means even this CSS is going to pile a lot in the head section, and it will make your work a little bit disorganized, which is not a good practice for coding. So that's why I'm gonna be recommending you guys to use external CSS a lot. So now let me introduce for you the external CSS. We say that it is the type of CSS that is used outside HTML file. That means we are not going to use it inside this file. We are not going to use it inside the index.html. We are going to put it outside, and then we shall just link it to this page, because that's what our definition says. If you still recall, external CSS is a CSS that is outside HTML but used in the HTML through linking. It is this linking that brings the effects to be used in our HTML file. So how do we create that external CSS? You have to come to your root folder, you right click, you create a new folder, you name it, let's name it CSS, since we are dealing with CSS today. You might not be seeing it right here now, but when you click on this, there you can see it. Now this is a folder, but external CSS is also, you can also create a file, and then that file is going to be kept inside this CSS. So now let's create that file by right clicking on CSS folder, and then you click on new file, you save that. Let me name it external .css. I think the name is really too long and it might confuse some people, thinking that I have already put the extension. This CSS is not the extension. Let me just name it style. So you can now save this. So here we don't have anything inside it, and this is where we're also going to be using style. So the style you have been seeing, we have almost used it in all the 3 types of CSS, because it is the one that really governs them. This, we have used it inside the inline CSS, we have also used it in the internal CSS. You can see that. So for the case of the internal CSS, the definition I gave it to you as the type of CSS that is used inside the head section. For now, I have just put it inside the head section, but you can also use this CSS even inside the body section, as long as you started with the style and then you close it. I've done this one to just make our code look clean. That's why I never wanted to bring it this way, and for you to also understand and differentiate between the two. Now the third one is really very, you can easily differentiate, because it is that type of CSS that is create it outside the HTML file, but you can have to just come and link it in order to take effect in the HTML file. So let's come back to our CSS folder, and then we go to our CSS file, which is called style.